Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. And, well, for me at least, the big news this week was the release of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I have been absolutely kicking the arse out of since 2 days before it was released. I went out and I bought the Gold Edition, which was the... I'm not really sure I should use the word cheapest in association with any edition of a Ubisoft game. The Gold Edition, which was the cheapest edition that would allow you to actually get early access to the game. £80. And if it hadn't been for the fact that, since I do own and play other Ubisoft games and I've accumulated a large amount of Ubisoft points, I would have just said screw this, waited 2 days and bought the standard edition, which only costs £60. But with 100 Ubisoft Club points, you were able to get a 20% discount on a pre-order. So the Gold Edition actually, and I hesitate to use the word only, but only cost me just over £60. Now, I've played other games in the past that I absolutely loved, but in no way justified the asking price. Jurassic World Evolution, prime example. I love the game, I think it's great, but it is definitely not worth £50. Even though they are pushing out free updates for it, as they damn well should, because £50 for the amount of content in that game? No. I do recommend the game, but only if it goes on sale. This, on the other hand, probably the most expensive game I've actually bought this year, definitely worth the asking price. Well, probably not worth forking out £80 without a discount for the Gold Edition, or the Deluxe Edition, or the Super Duper You Can't Bend It edition, or however many different editions Ubisoft are shoveling out for ridiculous amounts of money, but definitely worth the standard edition £60 price, because the amount of content in this game is just astonishing. I think in 5 days I've put 45 hours of gameplay into this game, and I'm barely halfway through. It is absolutely huge, and there's just so much to do, and it never gets boring. See, that's a problem with other games. I found that in some of the Far Cry games, and to an extent in Ghost Recon Wildlands, which this game is very, very similar to. It's basically exactly the same concept. Open world game with a plot and a quest line for you to follow, or not. It's entirely up to you. But lots and lots and lots of additional stuff to do along the way. The problem with other games, some of the Far Cry games, not so much Far Cry 5, but to an extent Far Cry 5 as well, and definitely also Ghost Recon Wildlands, is while they stuck to this formula, the amount of stuff that you did and the way that you did it did start to get kind of repetitive after 30 or 40 hours. I've yet to have that problem with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. In fact, it's almost exactly the opposite. At times, the amount of stuff that needs to be done at any one time can actually be a little bewildering and intimidating. And, well, when you're like me, and you've got the attention span of a mayfly, and you know what it is that you need to do, but, oh look, there's something over there that needs doing, I'll just go and do that. And then doing that, you pick up something that leads you on to something else, and then something else, and then, oh look, there's something over there, and then suddenly you're 3 hours of gameplay further on, and you still haven't done what it was that you logged in to do in the first place. Yeah, you're definitely going to find that happens a lot when you're playing this game. Word of warning, however, it does require a fairly hefty processor and graphics card and lots of memory. The game engine that it's running on is a couple of years old. I think they've pushed it about as far as they possibly can, and while a mid-range PC is able to get it looking pretty damn impressive with an acceptable frame rate, when you're recording gameplay at the same time and you're running it on very high settings, things tend to get... I mean, the game is fine. From my perspective, playing the game looked great, but the recorded video that I was producing, kind of choppy. As several people pointed out, when I pushed out an Assassin's Creed Odyssey video on Friday. Unfortunately, probably my first 15 hours of gameplay footage pretty much looks the same. Looked fine when I was playing, but the video, because I was using Bandicam, which records and compresses in real time, yeah, the video not so good. Frame rates were pretty bad. Now, I fixed that problem because now I'm using Shadowplay to record instead, which puts the load on my graphics card. And thanks to a couple of people who pointed out in Friday's Assassin's Creed Odyssey video, the game is actually horribly optimised. And there are ways that you can get a significant performance increase with next to no drop in visual quality, particularly those volumetric clouds. You can turn them right down for a start and you gain a huge, sometimes as much as 20% increase in frame rate. And that really, really helped. But I still have the issue, because I definitely want to be doing a video series on this game, I still have the issue that my first 12 to 15 hours of recorded gameplay footage looks pretty bad. So I'm actually considering just going back to the start and doing the whole thing over again and recording it all from fresh. All of the gameplay footage that you're looking at right now in the background should, once I've processed and uploaded the video, should look absolutely fine as far as the frame rate's concerned. This was all done after I'd optimised and started using Shadowplay to record instead of Bandicam. Now, normally, when you put upwards of 40 hours of progress into a game, and you're faced with the prospect of starting the whole thing again from scratch, it can be a bit of a blow to morale. But in the case of this game, I'm actually quite looking forward to it. I have no problem replaying this from scratch. I really do and have enjoyed playing this game that much. And in fact, I'm probably going to start again from scratch right after I finish recording this episode of Mingles with Jingles. See, I've got about a terabyte of recorded... Seriously, yeah. About a terabyte of Assassin's Creed Odyssey video footage recorded. Now, I'm obviously not going to be using all of that. It's going to get heavily edited down. But the first half, from level 1 up to about level 22, the video's choppy as all hell. Since I put the first video up on Friday, I've gone back and I've had a look at my first 400 gigabytes. And yeah, Bandicam did not do a fantastic job of recording the gameplay footage. It's basically unusable. The 400 gigabytes or so that I recorded after that using Shadowplay rather than Bandicam and after optimising the game's graphics, absolutely fine. Perfect quality. Technically, it's all still, well, it is completely usable. The problem is, it's those first 22 levels of gameplay that aren't. So you could argue that, well, I don't have to play through the entire game to get back to where I am. I can just do a fresh start, play up to about level 22, get to the same point in the main quest line, and then from that point on, use the perfectly fine pre-recorded footage that I already have. And yeah, I could do that, I suppose, but there's so many other different things that you do in the game, other than the main quest line, that it would be an absolute nightmare to try to sync everything up to make sure that I was at exactly the same spot. And I'm actually quite looking forward to the idea of starting the entire game again from scratch anyway, because I have enjoyed it that much. And it's not, I mean, the reasons why I'm enjoying this game as much as I am, it's not just that this is, in my opinion at least, so far, the best example of that open world gameplay style of game that Ubisoft have done in previous Assassin's Creed games, in the Ghost Recon Wildlands game, and in the Far Cry series, which I enjoyed immensely, but they've definitely perfected it here. But it's also the subject matter. The Peloponnesian War, ancient Greece. Because I've been to all of these places. When I was a kid, my two big passions were dinosaurs, which explains why I got so excited about Jurassic World Evolution, dinosaurs and Greek mythology and Greek history in general. Not so much the Romans, although I got interested in the Romans later on, but I was just a massive fan of Greek mythology, Greek heroes, Greek legends, and Greek history in general. And a lot of the places in the game are places that I have actually visited and looked at those ancient Greek ruins. you've got the city of Athens and its associated harbour town of Piraeus. On Crete, you've got Heraklion, site of battle during World War II, and also a fantastic place to visit. You've also got the Minoan Palace of Knossos, also on Crete, and underneath it the Labyrinth, where Theseus slayed the Minotaur. Killed. You get the idea. It's all here in the game. Interestingly, the Minoan ruins, in particular, they're even ruins here in the game, because it's kind of bizarre when you're sailing and riding and running around ancient Greece that you're coming across places that were historical ruins even by ancient Greek standards. And of course I've been to all of these places. Fantastic places to visit. So playing the game, aside from just being a great game, it's also a massive history nerdgasm for me in particular. And then there's all of the historical figures that you get to meet. People like Herodotus, considered to be the first true historian. Although Herodotus was predated by the great Greek writer Homer, who wrote the Iliad, the story of the Trojan War, and followed that up with the Odyssey, the story of Odysseus, taking 10 years to get back home to Ithaca from Troy after the war. But Homer is considered to be more of a storyteller than a historian. I mean, 10 years to get from Troy to Ithaca, seriously. And Odysseus' adventures along the way. Herodotus just wrote stuff down, right? He didn't try to embellish it and make stories out of it, so that's why he's considered to be the world's first true historian. Then of course you've got Pericles, the democratic leader of Athens. You've got Demosthenes, Athens' military leader. You've got Socrates, also in Athens. Socrates is hilarious, by the way. You've got, what was his name? Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine. This is why doctors take what's known as the Hippocratic Oath. Hippocrates was, as far as anybody can tell, the first person who thought that maybe making sacrifices and praying to the gods wasn't an efficient way of healing people. And he actually started looking into the causes of sicknesses and diseases in order to figure out how to actually cure them. He's here in the game as well, as is Pythagoras. Now, students of history may be thinking, hang on a second, this game's set in the Peloponnesian War. Pythagoras died about 150 years before that. Yeah, he did, didn't he? And I'm not going to say any more because we're venturing into spoiler territory. Suffice to say that after getting about 60% of the way through the plot line of this game and sinking well over 40 hours into it, I have absolutely no problem with the concept of abandoning all of that progress and starting entirely from scratch once again. This is not going to be a problem. Not a game as good as this. I am actually quite looking forward to starting the whole thing again. Particularly now that I have an idea of what to expect and can probably play through it a little bit more efficiently. Anyway, that's enough for now about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, although you can expect a video series on this game to be coming. I'm definitely going to be doing some video on the game I have enjoyed playing more than any other in recent memory. And I will, of course, be taking the opportunity, where appropriate, to toss in all kinds of historical references to the places, battles, and people that you come across while playing this game, because history is cool, kids. Anyway, what's next? Must be question time. So I'm popping over to the Mingles with the Jingles channel on the Salt Mines Discord server and having a look to see exactly what burning issues are keeping people awake at night that only I have the answers to. Oh, it turns out we're not getting entirely away from Assassin's Creed Odyssey just yet, because the very first question that's leapt out at me and grabbed me by the throat is from Fushin Pfeffer. Sounds suspiciously German. And he's got a question about the Assassin's Creed series. He says, "So Jingles, I haven't watched your video on Assassin's Creed yet." Oh yeah, he posted this question just a couple of minutes after the video went up. He's probably watched the video by now. "But if you like the style but not the gameplay, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is on Steam and I found its sailing to be extremely fun and recommend you try it out. But honestly, I'm just surprised you haven't actually played Assassin's Creed to begin with." Yeah, about that. A number of people recommended I have a go of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. and you can actually buy it with all of the DLC on Uplay for around about £16, and I thought that sounds like a bit of a bargain, and I really did enjoy the sailing battles in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, so I downloaded it, installed it, played it, and yeah, it does look like a very, very good game. However, I have actually played an Assassin's Creed game before this, and I think it was the very first Assassin's Creed game, and the thing that I really didn't like about it, which is entirely subjective, it might not be something that bothers anybody else, but it definitely bothered me, was, well, the thing with the Assassin's Creed games, I mean, you can see me running around ancient Greece here, slaying the Cretan bull. I'm not actually doing this. What happens in the Assassin's Creed games is that you're not actually that historical character running around that historical location. You're somebody running a simulation of historical characters running around historical locations. You see, the basic idea behind Assassin's Creed is that there's this new animus technology that if you can get the DNA of a historical figure, then you can run it through a processor and blah-de-blah-de-blah, and run this VR simulation from the memories within the DNA. Yeah, I know, don't ask. And that idea, which is apparently, well, it's not just the basis of the Assassin's Creed games, but it's also the basis of the book, or books upon which the games are based. Now, I wasn't a huge fan of that whole concept, mostly because the science is utter garbage, but it's just a game, I get it, you know, fine, whatever. I didn't realise you actually needed a reason to explain why you're running around ancient Greece, or the Caribbean, or Renaissance Italy, or wherever your Assassin's Creed game happens to be set. I thought just, you know, because you are that person was a perfectly reasonable explanation, but no. In Assassin's Creed, you've got this whole, you are actually running a VR simulation of these historical figures so that they can cram in this whole additional Templars versus Assassins subplot thing, and whatever. Again, this is purely subjective. A lot of people really love all of that stuff, but I didn't. And I didn't particularly because it just broke up the gameplay. This weekend, I'm playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which has aged reasonably well. And I was thoroughly enjoying myself, jumping around the rooftops of Havana, as Edward Kenway, the pirate, when every half an hour or so, for no apparently good reason that I could figure out, it would end the simulation and take me back to this modern day gaming company that were doing all of this research into the Pirates of the Caribbean in order to provide background data and video footage for their brand new computer game. I mean, no, stop. I was having fun. Can I go back to playing the pirate again? And this is why I never really got into the Assassin's Creed series as a whole. And it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Because they keep that kind of bullshit to an absolute minimum. You get a little bit right at the start of the game, and you get a little bit around about halfway through, and I suspect there's probably going to be a little bit towards the end. But other than that, I'm just running around ancient Greece as Cassandra, poking holes in people with my javelin and having a fantastic time doing it without any kind of distractions, breaking the immersion by reminding me that I'm actually just playing a simulation. Now, I do realise, of course, that I am definitely in the minority here. The Assassin's Creed series has sold more than 100 million copies worldwide, with 11 games published. So, most people clearly aren't bothered by any of this, and in fact, the whole subplot of Assassins versus Templars is probably a big draw for a lot of people. Not so much me. And unfortunately, it's kind of ruined Assassin's Creed Black Flag for me, which I have to admit did look like being a very, very good game. I mean, right from the start, it throws you straight into the action, and within no time at all, you're leaping around the rooftops of Havana in Cuba, assassinating people, and it's great fun. But the problem for me was that just as I was really getting into the whole process of jumping around the rooftops of Havana and sinking my swords into the backs of various ne'er-do-wells, it would keep pulling me out of the simulation in order to go and deliver software bug analysis reports to the head of game quality control, and just, no, fuck off. I was having fun, why do you have to keep spoiling it? Now, I'm sure that this whole other side to the games is at some point going to develop into something that may actually be quite interesting. You know, the whole Assassins versus Templars subplot thing that they have going on. But for God's sake, I mean, will you stop it? Or at least get to the point. So, yeah. Sorry. I'm going to stick to Assassin's Creed Odyssey, because it keeps that kind of thing to an absolute bare minimum, and I can just enjoy running around ancient Greece, sticking my javelin into people. And, of course, you know, getting into arguments with Socrates, and usually losing, because it's Socrates. Oh, actually, that's another thing about this game that I really do appreciate. It's really helping with my pronunciation of, well, ancient Greek, because apparently it's not Socrates, it's Socrates, and it's not Pythagoras, it's Pythagoras. So, you know. So, Ubisoft, if you're paying attention, if you could possibly set your next Assassin's Creed game in Japan during World War II, that would really help me out with the pronunciation of Japanese warships. Okay. Thanks. Anyway, moving on swiftly, what's next? Next question comes from Commie Anime Girl, and oh wow, this seems to be the Ubisoft edition of Mingles with Jingles. Commie Anime Girl says, "Howdy Jingles, I just had a quick question. Do you plan on buying The Division 2 when it comes out, and if so, will you make a video series on it? I liked your series on The Division, but it was a bit lacking in terms of episodes. Yours truly, long-time fan." Yeah, Commie Anime Girl, I'm definitely going to be getting The Division 2. Whether or not I do any videos on it, well, I'll probably do at least one, but whether I do any more than one will depend on how good the game is. See, that was kind of the problem with The Division, because there wasn't, well, at least when it was first released, there wasn't a huge amount to do once you'd reached the level cap. It was just a question of, well, farming world bosses for loot drops, and then going back and redoing the same old content that you'd done while you were leveling up, just on a substantially harder difficulty setting. They did reasonably quickly address that issue. There have been a whole bunch of free content updates and some paid content updates, depending on whether or not you actually bought the season passes and got all the DLC, because, you know, it's Ubisoft. And now, and probably for the last year or so, The Division has actually been a very, very good game to play. There's been a ton of content released. So I am looking forward to The Division 2. I will be getting it. I like what I've seen so far, but, well, I'm always very wary of canned footage direct from the game developers, because, well, they managed to make the Phantom Menace look good in the trailers. So, you know, the proof is in the pudding. So I will be playing it, and hopefully they've learned enough from the lessons of the first game that they can avoid repeating the same mistakes in the second one, and hopefully improve on what ended up being a fairly successful formula. Although, as I understand it, the second game's set in Washington, D.C., and again, you know, it's just like the Assassin's Creed games. Well, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, at least. One of the major attractions for me in Assassin's Creed Odyssey was that I have actually been to most of the locations. Well, not most of the locations, but I've been to some of the locations that you visit in the game. And that's what I really liked about the original Division as well, because I've been to New York many times, and wandering around and seeing this kind of devastated 28 days later version of all of these places that I've actually been to in real life was one of the big reasons why I absolutely, despite its problems, very much enjoyed the first Division. So I'm not going to have that to look forward to in the second game, because it's set in Washington DC, and I've never been to Washington DC, so it's going to have to impress me on gameplay and content alone. Next question comes from Noob Lord. Jingles, you said in your last video, teenage boys everywhere, you're welcome. Is that evidence that you have psychic powers? Okay. For those of you who have no idea what he's talking about, at one point in, and yeah, we're straight back to Assassin's Creed Odyssey again. At one point in Friday's video, the main character, Cassandra, dives from a cliff into a water-filled underwater cave, and while she's swimming, the camera is obviously behind her, and there are several gratuitous panty shots. and that's the point where I said, teenage boys everywhere, you're welcome. This is actually a reference to the movie Pitch Black. Has anybody seen Pitch Black? I'm sure most of you probably have. It's pretty good. The director, David Toohey, if you watch the director's commentary of the movie, there's a point where the lead actress, Radha Mitchell, is climbing into this underground bug's nest. and she's wearing a very low-cut top. And the camera is in front of her as she gets down onto her chest and crawls through this hole, and you can see straight down her cleavage. And that's the exact point where the director says, "Teenage boys everywhere, you're welcome." So that was actually a straight reference to the director's commentary of the Pitch Black movie at that precise point where you got a really good view of Rhoda Mitchell's tits. So I'm surprised nobody... Well, then again, maybe I shouldn't be too surprised. It's a fairly obscure reference, but that's basically why I said it. Our next question... And there's just no getting away from Assassin's Creed today, is there? This is from Tingers. Dear Jingles, having watched your video on the new Assassin's Creed game, you commented on its gameplay, levelling and loot drops. Jim Sterling is known, as you're aware, for his disgust for predatory and greedy corporate business practices within the gaming world. So it was interesting to see his video on the same game, linked below. Okay. So I can answer this question properly. I'm basically going to stop here, go away, watch Jim Sterling's video, and then come back and finish reading out the rest of this question. Okay, I'm back. This leads me to the questions. How have you found the grind? Do you feel Jim's viewpoint is accurate when looking at the game as a whole? Or do you think Ubisoft's business model for the game is targeted towards the casual gamer, say, someone who can only put in an hour or so every other night, rather than someone who will spend 6 hours a day exploring every little nook and cranny there is, and gaining XP that way, and so doesn't need the boosters, as an example? Or in your view, have they gone for the jugular with pound signs in their eyes? Okay. I've now watched Jim's video, and I don't normally disagree with Jim Sterling. Generally speaking, when it comes to big publishers like Ubisoft, Activision, Electronic Arts, he's right on the money, at least in my opinion. I'm not entirely sure I agree with him in the case of this game, however. I mean, he makes some good points, particularly when it comes to things like boosters. You can buy boosters for the game with a currency that they call Helix credits. This is basically just your premium currency, like gold in World of Tanks and doubloons in World of Warships. What the boosters do is they increase the amount of money and experience that you earn while playing from all activities by 50%, and that's a fairly large boost. Jim's point of contention is, why would you need to buy a booster in a full price, well, higher than full price game? If there's any grind in there that makes people feel the need to buy one of these boosters, the grind is designed into the game. Ubisoft have designed this game. If there's a problem, it's a problem that they have created in order to sell you a solution. And in that respect, I can't argue with him. He's absolutely 100% correct. This is how a mobile game makes its money. This is how free-to-play games make their money. The grind is built into the game so that you feel compelled to go to the premium store and spend money on things that reduce the grind, like a premium account in World of Tanks or World of Warships. And there have been a couple of times, not often, but there have been a couple of times while playing this game that I've run into a level block. And what I mean by that is I'm progressing through the storyline, and basically just the storyline. I'm not bothering with most of the side quests, and I've reached a block to progress where I'm not high enough level to be able to kill what needs to be killed in order to progress the story. Now, if or when that happens, depending on how you play the game, there are two solutions. One, go to the Helix store and buy one of these boosters, or play the game. It's just... See, here's the thing. I mean, I can kind of understand where people are coming from on this issue, but this is not a cheap game. If you've got a copy of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you have paid a minimum of £60 for the privilege. And if you're just rushing through the main quest line as quickly as possible so you can see the ending credits, you're not getting your money's worth out of this game. You're basically skipping through around about 80% of the content. Well, you won't be able to, because you'll hit the level block. You'll eventually, at some point, you'll reach a boss or a character that needs to die that you're just not high enough level to do. And you'll have to go back and look at those side quests and explore all those unexplored locations and just play the game. Okay, yeah, fine. Not everybody has the time to explore every single nook and cranny and do every side quest and meet every optional character and so on and so on and so on. But, you know, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? Because if that's the case, if you can only dedicate maybe an hour each night, maybe more than that on a weekend to gaming, then yeah, you're probably still going to be playing this game 6 months from now. But is that a bad thing? You've spent £60 on a game that you're still going to be exploring and finding new things to see and do 6 months from now. You're getting your money's worth out of the £60 or more that you've spent on it. That is not actually a bad thing. You're only going to find a need to reduce the grind if you're trying to blast through the storyline as quickly as you possibly can. And I think that's who these Helix boosters are targeted at. Actually, full disclosure, I have bought one of these boosters. I do get 50% bonus experience and gold. The game does actually give you 200 Helix credits at some point relatively early on. But you can't really buy a huge amount with 200 Helix credits. This is, I have to admit, this is a bit shady of Ubisoft. They basically give you 200 Helix credits, and you think, oh, let's go and see what I can buy. Which leads to you looking at the store, looking at all of the things that you can't afford to buy with 200 Helix credits, and thinking to yourself, maybe if I was to actually buy some, I could afford some of these shiny objects. None of which you actually need. I mean, like I said, I have bought one of these boosters, and I bought it relatively late on into the game. I think I was around about level 27, 28, maybe level 30 when I did it. And up until that point, I hadn't run into any problems with stuff being higher level than me and stopping my progress, because I had been exploring every nook and cranny and doing all of the side quests and visiting every unexplored location. But that was more or less the point where the story really started to open up, and from that point on, I did find myself skipping all of the side quests, not exploring everywhere, and basically not getting my money's worth out of the game. And then, when I was around about level 35 or 36, I did run into a content block where I just couldn't progress the particular quest that I was on, because the thing that needed to die in order for me to get any further was 5 levels higher than me. And at that point, oh, look at all of this content that I've skipped. Huge portions of the game that I just didn't bother with on the way here because I was so engrossed in seeing how the storyline developed. So there's a very, very simple solution. Just go back, play the game, and get your actual money's worth out of the content that you have paid for without having to reach into your pocket and give Ubisoft any more. It's not often that I find myself disagreeing with Jim Sterling, and while I don't completely disagree with him, he does make a valid point. If there's any grind built into the game, well, that's a case of the developer creating a problem in order to be able to sell you a solution. But I don't really feel that that's an issue in this game, unless you're determined to just try to blitz through the quests and the main storyline just to get to the end credits as quickly as you possibly can. And if you're doing that, you are definitely not getting the value of the £60 or more that you've already put into Ubisoft's pockets in order to play the game in the first place, because you're skipping through 80% of all of the content in this game. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. Sadly not sponsored by Ubisoft. I wish. I hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, I hope you have a great week. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.